Florida football, a state with pride, soaked in a bunch of history and absolute chaos in every single way, including the traffic and the people. There are about 7 FBS schools in Florida. There's USF, a team with a short but surprisingly impressive history for a group of 5 school. Think of them as underdogs that punch above their weight, unlike FIU and FAU. They pretty much just play their games and you pretty much never hear nothing about them. Then there's UCF, ironically perched right into the middle of it all. Neither the kings of the state nor at the bottom, right in between with their own national championship, if you want to call it that. And of course, we can't forget about the big dogs, Florida and Florida State, teams with Heismans, national championships, and enough tradition to make college football nerds cry themselves to sleep at night, including me, which leads us to the team that I haven't mentioned yet. Even with the hierarchy that there is in Florida, ironically, FIU, FAU being at the bottom, UCF and USF in the middle, and Florida State and Florida being at the top, the team that has the best out of everything in all of these categories is none other than the team that sits all the way at the bottom near the Key West, the University of the Miami Hurricanes. Really fucking. Oh my god. These crackers are really good. Sorry, guys. Before I continue with the video, I just want to thank everyone for the support I've gotten in these first 3 videos. Didn't think I'd get as much as I thought I would, but here we are. Again, I thank you guys. I think we've gained like about 8 subscribers in the past couple of weeks. So, work in progress for sure, obviously. Not my best work. I'm going to keep improving. I'm going to keep doing the things I need to do to take a step further. Might take a while, but hey, if you want to stick for the long run, hit that like button and subscribe. And if you don't want to do it now, just at least watch the video and consider it. Leave a comment at least, man, on your thoughts. Again, thank you guys and enjoy the rest of the video. Why'd I do that? Before Miami was the U, before the national championships and the swagger, there was a freshman football team in 1926. And not just any freshman team, a team that actually went undefeated, going 8-0. Their first wins came against Rollins College. And yes, what you're about to hear was a real thing. 2 games against the University of Havana. That's right. That Havana. The one in Cuba. Now, during this year, a hurricane actually struck South Florida in September of 1926, delaying classes and forever branding the program with its name. That's actually pretty hilarious, I'm not gonna lie. After their great year as a freshman team, they finally took the jump to being a varsity team, which took the field the year after and finished 3-6-1 when ties were still a thing. The program actually started out as independent, slowly building its schedule, reputation, and relevance from the ground up. And then 1930 came and one significant event happened here for Miami, the Orange Bowl. It was created by none other than Miami, which they ended up hosting against Bucknell, believe it or not. And the result was a 26-0 loss. Now that may not seem great in hindsight, but Miami started history here. The 1940s, 50s, and 60s were all flashes of success, winning seasons here and there, bowl appearances, and more importantly, some legendary players along the way. As things continued to grow in the 1970s, Miami was competitive, but they weren't that powerhouse that they wanted to be. Matter of fact, they were far from it. They were pretty established around this time, with this era belonging to guys like Otis Anderson, who started from 1975 to 1978, and actually became Miami's first 1,000-yard rusher at the time, and eventually the all-time leader in rushing. Then came the shift, the dramatic shift that they needed. Miami hired Howard Schnellenberger. I hope I said that right. His first season was 5-6, not flashy, but very low expectations for the new head coach. However, things began to go upward. In 1980, Miami jumped to 9-3 and got a Peach Bowl victory. 1981, they went 9-2. And in 1982, they did sort of regress a bit, going 7-4. But they were being consistent. They were winning games more often than not, which was great. It was great for the program. From 1926 to 82, Miami's goal was just to grow into its own identity. However, that identity was still missing, but they were getting really close. Very damn close. Miami football from their inception was just there. They weren't the only team that was just there. Matter of fact, every Florida school that was in the FBS level at that time were just there playing their games. Bowl games from now and then, but not necessarily taking that heavy jump to national success. From 1869 to 1982, that is over 113 years. But believe it or not, in 1983, something crazy happened. Now, around this time, I would like to call it the golden era of football from 1983 to 2014. If we do the math here, 29% of all national title appearances belong to Florida teams and 35% were national champions. That's about a third. Of course, there's always some complications in terms of talking about national championship games, especially before the BCS. And even then, the BCS itself wasn't perfect, which leads me to talking about the video I made previously, which you should definitely go check out. But back to this. In 1983, Miami became the first Florida program to win a national championship. And they didn't just elevate themselves, they put the state on the map. Now again, going back to those 26 to 82 years, their winning percentage was 663. That's very solid and respectable. Shows that you're a great program. However, they were missing a few things. Obviously some award winners, some Heismans, and some national championships. Of course, this is where the beginning of the golden era begins for Miami. It only gets better from here. As for Schellenberg, in his 5th year winning a national championship was huge. Compared to the coaches in the previous decade, being about 6 of them combined for a record of 36 and 62. Schellenberg, being the 7th and final head coach of the decade, had 5 more wins than all those coaches combined. However, he did make a bit of a bonehead decision by joining the USFL. Not even going to tell you what team he joined. That's all I'm going to say. He joined the USFL. However, this was kind of a blessing in disguise. As for how they won the national championship, as again I explained how complicated it was back then, Miami was the 5th team in the nation that year. They ended up beating Nebraska in the Orange Bowl, ironically. But after some chaos, with only one team in the top 4 winning, being number 3 Auburn, the AP poll decided to choose Miami over Auburn as the national champion. Now, despite them losing their head coach, this was a blessing in disguise because the next coach up is a Hall of Famer. And you may have heard him before, Jimmy Johnson. That name is truly synonymous with sports, depending on which one you're talking about, in terms of Texas dominance, championships at Miami. Specifically, though, when it comes to Texas dominance, I'm talking about the Dallas Cowboys. That's right, Jimmy with the Y. The upgrade Miami didn't even know they were getting. Johnson was okay at Oklahoma State before joining Miami, and his worst year was his first year, an 8-5 record. And they went against an absolute gauntlet that year. After that, it was 45-4 over the next 4 years. He went 2-3 in bowl games, which doesn't sound amazing. However, Schellenberg only made 2 bowl games in his 5 years, and also won a national championship in 1987, which was also the Orange Bowl, believe it or not. This is also the first time Miami actually went undefeated in their history. Along with that, another first-timer being Miami having the ability to sustain success with 2 different head coaches. Very hard to do and very impressive. And somehow it got better. After Jimmy made a much better decision heading to the Dallas Cowboys, Miami hired Dennis Erickson, and statistically, he might have even been better than Jimmy Johnson. Erickson had the same number of losses as Jimmy Johnson, but his worst season was 9-3. Every year, bowl game. Every year, contender. In his first season, Miami won its 3rd national title of the decade. Then after a 10-2 season, Miami joined the Big East. A very long history of staying independent. I'm not going to make the joke. After joining the Big East, they immediately dominated. Undefeated once again and winning 2nd time in 4 years. And of course, they won the national championship. This would also be the final year that the AP poll would specifically choose the national championship, as we were entering a new era. The Bowl Alliance Coalition era, the most forgettable era of all time. Anyways, as college football transitioned into the Bowl Alliance era, Erickson led Miami through 3 more elite seasons. No more titles, but plenty of heartbreak, as they had 1992 and 94, getting another shot at the national championship, but Alabama and Nebraska stood in their way, along with losing their 1993 bowl game. Erickson left for Seattle. To sum up his career there, Jason Garrett, Jeff Fisher. Now, we're entering the worst part of this era, and saying it's the worst isn't even a bad thing because Butch Davis did a decent job. Outside of 1997, which was Miami's first losing season in 20 years, the Hurricanes were consistently competitive. However, not once did Miami reach a national championship, and Florida State was trying to catch up a bit to Miami. Now, although Butch Davis did end up creating a lot of talent, so you got to give him that at least, but definitely the worst tenure out of the 5 coaches. Speaking of 5 coaches, the 5th and final one we will be talking about the golden era, Larry Coker. Now, before Larry Coker even came in, Butch Davis actually left the team for the Cleveland Browns. Might be a worse decision somehow than Schellenberger. But besides that, Butch left the team off with a 10-game winning streak, their last loss being to number 15 Washington. As for Larry Coker, who was taking over a Miami team that was pretty much hot at that time, reached even hotter levels. From 2000 to 2002, Miami went on an insane run. 34 straight wins, dominant national title over Nebraska. Their only real challenges were against FSU, Virginia Tech, Boston College, and Pitt. Their schedules were brutal, tough. They even beat Washington State again, and Miami survived all of it. By 2002, Miami was 12-0 with one game left. On this 34-game run, they could make history. As time continued to tick to their final game, Miami had the chance to be known as the greatest dynasty of all time. And with Miami performing the way they were, it isn't crazy to not say they could have been a dynasty. Now, before we jump into the juicy part, this is what they were able to do from 1983 to 2002. 5 national championships, 8 conference titles. Mind you, they joined the Big East in 1991. 35 consensus All-Americans, 2 Heisman winners, 3 Maxwells, 2 Davey O'Briens, and Nagurski, Badnarik, 250 to 300 NFL draft picks, and a winning percentage that blew 1926 to 82 away. 770. Absurd. They didn't just dominate it, they ended eras. Specifically, Nebraska in 2001. What have they done since then? Matter of fact, this team is so legendary that they even have a 30-for-30 about them. However, all good things must come to an end. And on January 3rd, 2003, something dark waited in Sun Devil Stadium. God, Arizona? Ugh. Miami were one win away from back-to-back national championships. Another ring would cement themselves as one of the greatest dynasties of all time and make them truly untouchable. But standing in their way was none other than a sleeping giant. Ohio State hadn't won a national title since 1970, which was about 32 years. And don't get it twisted, Ohio State was never bad, but it had been so long since they reached national heights that they were sort of falling under the radar. They hadn't been undefeated since 68, back when teams only played 10 games. Technically, they did go undefeated in 1973, but they had a tie in the mix there, so can't really count that. Before that matchup, Miami and Ohio State actually played each other in East Rutherford, New Jersey. Miami won that game in an ugly way. The defense did its job, only allowing 12 points. The offense did do enough, but it was not pretty. Kenny Kelly struggled most of the season, opening the door for Ken Dorsey to slowly take over. By 2000, Dorsey wasn't just the guy. He was leading Miami to insurmountable heights. Fast forward, on the other side, Craig Knedzel, at that time a redshirt freshman who was watching from the bench, got his opportunity to get some get back. These two quarterbacks would meet once again, and this time it was for something much bigger than a game in East Rutherford, New Jersey. The game was loaded. A combined 17 seniors started from that game. Every senior watched that matchup happen, and now they were living in the sequel with everything on the line. And to sum up the game for you, statistically, Miami won this game. But football, believe it or not, isn't played on the spreadsheets for the ones who are always score watching. It's played in the moments. And one moment changed everything. The passing interference call, the only BCS controversy that didn't involve the BCS itself. Before going even further, let's slow this down. As I went to go watch it myself a couple of times just to gather my final thoughts. Shout out to Austin, who broke this video down 17 years ago with an absolute banger of an analysis. The first issue, the flag was a bit late. It was about 3 seconds late, to be exact. Miami players were already celebrating before the flag hit the turf. When officials threw that flag late, it usually means hesitation, which means controversy. Secondly, was it even the right call? By definition, and using the rules Austin provided here, this wasn't a passing interference. Gamble touches the ball first before Sharp even makes contact. Football, the wide receiver, if he touches the ball first before the corner touches him, that's not a passing interference. As for the face mask argument that I saw around the internet, it was more accidental, and the pull was very minimal. And there's very minimal holding too, as that was another thing I saw. Even if it was a bad call, whether you agree or not, that was it. History changed in real time, and Miami had everything pulled from underneath them as Ohio State scored a touchdown, scored again, and stopped Miami to win their first national championship in 32 years. And for this era, to end the way it did, wondering what it could have truly been. Because that night didn't just end a streak, it marked the moment where a dynasty stopped being inedible and started becoming fragile. 2003 didn't just mark the end of an era, it also marked the end of the Miami Hurricanes' time in the Big East, where they would end up beating Florida State 16-14. One last reminder of what this rivalry used to mean. Then the move to the ACC didn't immediately spell disaster. Their first two seasons were respectable, back-to-back 9-3 seasons, and a 2004 bowl win over Florida felt good. However, in 2005, cracks began to show. LSU dominated Miami, absolutely blowing them out of the water. That game was only a warning for what was to come. 2006 would be the final year of Larry Coker. 2006 was a real step back. Miami entered the season ranked at number 12. 3 weeks later, it was gone, completely unranked. Their wins this season: Florida A&M, Houston, FIU, a struggling Louisville, and number 18 Boston College. Believe it or not, that Boston College win was the final game of the season, and it salvaged their season, allowing them to play an extra game for the MPC Computer Bowl, which is also known as the Idaho Potato Bowl, which does seem a bit odd considering that Miami's used to playing for those nice fruits, but they were playing for a vegetable this year. Doesn't feel right. To make matters worse, their coach didn't even coach in the bowl game as he was fired as the season ended. Yeah, imagine beating the 18th best team in the nation and getting fired. A very weird way to go for sure. And for the first time, Miami didn't lose a head coach due to them getting a promotion. They fired a head coach, and it had been a damn long time since they fired a head coach, that's for sure. Holy. It's time to go shopping, but they stayed in their home range, hiring Randy Shannon, longtime defensive coordinator, who kept those Miami defenses consistently in the top 10. Made sense to promote a guy like that who clearly shown success doing what he did, but his tenure was rocky. In 2007, names were removed from the jerseys. What stated was they wanted a more team over player approach, stricter conduct rules, and a complete culture reset. The swagger was officially overhauled. And it didn't work. Miami had his worst season since 1997. The ACC was not forgiving, and Oklahoma in week 2 made it painfully clear Miami was no longer a powerhouse. They did beat Texas A&M though. But 3 of the 5 wins were out of conference. Their 2 wins in the ACC that year were a 1-11 Duke team by 10 points and Florida State, whose wins were later vacated due to an academic scandal. The bragging rights didn't feel as great as they used to. It felt hollow. And then something darker hit South Florida as Sean Taylor, 2 days later after the season ended, tragically passed away. A man who was almost a hero for Miami in that unfortunate 2002 BCS National Championship game. One of the most talented safeties in the league. 2008 and 2009 saw progression. Defenses were playing better, but the offense scored just 3 points in week 2. Don't worry, guys. They beat Texas Tech. However, they lost to North Carolina, who was actually coached by former head coach Butch Davis. Their wins were eventually vacated. And Florida State, who got revenge after last year. Still, they did manage a win over a Florida team, technically. UCF. Not convincingly, however. Despite this, they did spark up a 5-game winning streak, but ended up losing the final 3 games, including the Emerald Bowl to Cal. 2009 was Shannon's best year. They beat Florida State in week 1, got revenge on Georgia Tech and Oklahoma. Their losses came to Virginia Tech, Clemson, and North Carolina. Despite this strong season, Wisconsin denied them the Citrus Bowl. Damn it. No Fruit Bowl for now. And it wasn't even the Orange Bowl, it was the Citrus Bowl. Their best season, they pretty much came out with nothing. And 2010 was just another setback. One ranked win from 13th to unranked. A loss to Ohio State. That one had to have burned. Another late season collapse. 3 or more losses to end the year once again. Their 3rd time doing that in his 4-year tenure. Randy Sharon was fired after the season, and similar to Larry Coker, before the bowl game. However, I will give Shannon credit for having the 3rd best academic progress rate, only 1 arrest during his tenure, and shifted the culture in a way that was awkward but positive. And of course, he avoided a catastrophe that was already brewing and was just waiting to explode right in front of Miami's face. The Nevin Shapiro scandal. From 2002 to 2010, ironically, mastermind of a $1.3 billion Ponzi scheme provided players with cash, gifts, and assorted favors. Both Shannon and his successor denied ever speaking to him, but I plead the fifth on what I think about this. It didn't matter. Miami ended up actually paying the price. Their penalties included a 3-year probation, 9 football scholarships lost, and it even affected the basketball, including a coaching suspension, recruiting restrictions, and found guilty of lack of institutional control. They also put a self-imposed bowl ban from 2011 and 2012. Meanwhile, their new head coach, Al Golden, was put in the fire off rip. The dude did not have a fighting chance. Although he did great things at Temple, looking back at it, he probably regretted joining Miami to begin with. However, even so, after going 13-11 in his first 2 seasons, which were pretty much lost causes, 2013 started differently. Something clicked. A 7-0 start. However, you could notice this was the fall part, and they ended up playing Florida State. If you don't think too about 2013 Florida State, this team was, oof. This team hurts. Auburn, Miami fans, let's come together. Let's just have a moment of silence. Florida State would end up beating Miami and would go on to win the BCS. And Miami completely collapsed after that, finishing 9-4 and lost another bowl game. 2014 was regression. That's all it was. Nothing memorable. Nada. 2015 looked promising. A 3-0 start until Miami suffered their worst loss in program history. Ironically, I believe their second worst loss, which is a fun fact, was all the way in 1945 where they played Texas A&M and lost 70-14. That's 56 points. Now, what's the worst, you might think? 58-0 Clemson. I mean, yeah. After that, Golden was gone. Larry Scott would end the season 4-2 for Miami, but they wouldn't win a bowl game. Another winning season didn't really feel like it. Felt like a failure. But something interesting happened that year. A head coach, a legendary head coach, was in the market. It was perfect timing, I might add. Mark Richt, a former Miami quarterback. A quarterback that was there from 1979 to 1982. He just missed out on that 83 year. A very elite coach at Georgia, but never won the big one. However, he was going to try to do it at Miami. It was a homecoming reunion. In 2016, Miami went 9-4. Ready for this? They won a ball game. Ho ho! 10-year drought. Done. Finito. 2017 was even better, ladies and gentlemen. Miami is back. 13 Virginia Tech gone. Number 3 Notre Dame. Goodbye. Climbed to number 2 in the nation. All they needed to do was win against Pitt. And regardless if they even beat Pitt, they were still in the ACC championship game. They lost to a 4-7 Pitt team. And in the ACC championship game, we could have gotten a 1 versus 2 seed, the greatest game of all time. It wouldn't have mattered. Clemson absolutely throttled them. This would have been the worst 1 versus 2 game of all time. Matter of fact, scratch that. There's probably some worse games out there. However, Miami got back to the Orange Bowl for the first time in what felt like forever, just to lose to Wisconsin. That's another 3-game losing skid, if you were wondering. 2 games away from the national championship, or playoffs, the 14 playoffs, gone. And 2018 started with them being ranked at number 8, along with a 5-1 start. And then, of course, the typical collapses after the horrific collapse they had. Play Wisconsin again in the Pinstripes Bowl, aka what I like to call it, the Fall-Off Bowl. Think you know what happened here. Mark Richt would retire after this and would never win his national championship. The coach that followed, Manny Diaz, holy, former defensive coordinator, former Temple head coach. Is this Al Golden in disguise? From 2003 to 2021, Miami became a roller coaster of hope, collapse, reset, repeat. 4 head coaches, interims, compared to the 5 during their prime. Here's the winning percentage. The golden era was 770, and from 2003 to 2021, which is a similar time frame, 615. Which, if you think about it, that's not horrible, but if you really look deep into it, they were awful. The golden era had them going 10-7 in bowl games, along with 5 national championships. From 2003 to 2021, obviously 0 title appearances, not even a playoff appearance, and they went 4-10 in bowl games. One of the sharpest fall-offs college football has ever seen. And then 2022 came around. However, in 2022, something crazy happened. Enter Mario Cristobal, another former player, an outside tackle for when Miami won their 4th national championship. as he later returned as a graduate assistant from 98 to 1000, left for Rutgers for 01 and 03, eventually coming back to be the tight end and offensive lineman coach. After a couple years, took the FIU job for 5 years, and to be honest, it's just not sugarcoated, he wasn't great. 27 and 47. Then he did the smartest thing possible, went to Alabama for 3 years to learn under Nick Saban. After that, Cristobal crossed the country to Oregon, first as a co-offensive coordinator and an O-line coach, then after a year actually took over as head coach after a bowl loss in Las Vegas, and this time he did much better. At Oregon, Cristobal became a real winner. 3 straight Pac-12 title games, 2 conference championships, 39 and 19. Then before the Oregon Bowl game, ironically, before Oregon's bowl game, he left. Why? Because Miami offered a contract so ridiculous that I believe that literally 0 people would say no to. It's so ironic, too, because Miami usually fires head coaches before their bowl games, but here we are. They're hiring Cristobal before their bowl game. And since returning for the 3rd time, Cristobal has improved every single year, something that the last 4 head coaches couldn't do in a consistent rate. Last season, Miami actually had a real shot at making the new 12-team playoff. This year, his 4th year has definitely been his best. Another 10-2 season, enough to jump Notre Dame, who they beat, and it was enough to give Miami its first real national title opportunity since 2012. Yes, they've had some great seasons in between, and yes, some of those teams probably could have made the 12-team playoff. Regardless, that was just a pipe dream, back then at least. Today, thanks to the new format, Miami is officially back from the dead. The major differences that Mario Cristobal has done other than his predecessors was recruiting and consistently. In the early mid 2000s, Miami was usually in the top 5, top 10, even reaching number 1 in 2008. Though that class wasn't as definitive as it looked, as USC and Bama were also claimed to be the number 1 team in terms of recruiting, and judging by how those teams have done in that era, I think it's safe to say that Alabama had the best recruiting class. The late 2000s brought a dip, and 2010 got worse. They were in the mid-teens, even the top 20s, fluctuating in between the low teens and high 30s. For Miami, that's extremely mediocre, and in 2020 and 2021 marked the lowest points around the 30s. Then Cristobal came. Ever since he joined, Miami has climbed all the way up to number 4 nationally. 2 of those freshmen from that number 4 nationally ranked class, Malachi Toney and Brian Fitzgerald, who just made a game-clinching interception against... Yeah, this year's class has dipped to number 13, but with the transfer portal, that might change. Then the consistency. Obviously, already mentioned, he has climbed up every year with a better record. And this year, thanks to the 12-team playoff format, they finally have a real shot. They haven't had a 3-game losing skid in 2 years, which is unprecedented and definitely refreshing to see. Ironically, year 1 did start off with a 3-game losing streak. Ironically, year 1 did have a 3-game losing streak as well, and it started against Texas A&M, who, they just beat. But this is where the resurgence actually pauses, because waiting for Miami in the Con Bowl is an old demon, a familiar one, a team Miami desperately wants to bury and must beat if they're going to take those final steps back towards dominance. The defending champion, Ohio State, versus the Sleeping Giants. I swear I've said that before, haven't I? If you guys enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. Comment something down, your thoughts on what you think about the video, and subscribe. And if you want to check out my gaming channel or my Twitch, here they are. My gaming channel, if you're wondering, will remain dormant for a couple of days. I'm revising a couple of things. Outside of that, you should be able to see me on Twitch pretty much daily, and that's pretty much it. This one took me a bit to make, and I know I promised a Heisman video, but I'm putting that to the side for now. I know I've been promising it. It will come as you expect. If you have any ideas of your own, leave them down. I'll probably revise them, talk about them. I'll probably look at them, and even maybe make a video on them. I'm probably not going to make another video due to the fact that the second round of the college football playoffs are coming. That will be the next video. I hope you all enjoy. Take care. Bless y'all. Peace.